It's Reforge. That's why we have the big Reforge logo on here. And it's how I learned to stop worrying and love OKRs. Um, Happy that folks are joining. I am going to get started because we have 44 minutes remaining to talk about everybody's favorite subject. Can't believe everyone signed up for this on a Monday morning. I'm just like pumped that people are here to talk about objectives and key results on a Monday morning. We're going to spend about a minute, a little bit about me, 29-ish minutes on how I stopped worrying and learned to love OKRs, and 15-ish minutes for Q&A. Again, this is a little bit more like an actual Reforge session. If you haven't taken a Reforge class, everybody's on camera, people are on mute. Like if you're just joining, turn your camera on so you can see everybody. We're going to do Q&A at the end. It'll feel a little bit more live. It's really nice to see everybody's faces this morning. Thank you. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Jesu. Hi, Farah. I can see people's faces. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Chris. Hi, Sai. Hi, Ikaro. Hi, Yulia. Hi, Jose. Hi, Shannon. Hi, Asra. Hi, Jonathan. Look, you're getting shout outs on a webinar. That's weird. It's 2024. We're still learning how to use Zoom. It's pretty great. My name's Michael Sippy. I'm your host for the next 43 minutes now. I'm a product advisor. I've done product management for longer than I care to remember. I like to think that I'm older than I look. I was the former CPO at Medium, online publishing platform, CPO at Outside Interactive, VP product at Descript, VP product at Twitter for a little while during crazy times. It's always been crazy times at Twitter, so that's not really saying much. I'm currently advising a bunch of startups, including Readwise, Enrich, Pi, Wolf Games, and a bunch of other things. I teach at Reforge. I teach product strategy, which is happening right now, and I teach mastering product management. This session today cribs a whole bunch of material from mastering product management. So this is sort of a teaser for that class, which you should sign up for if you like this material and you like my dulcet tones, then maybe it's a good fit for you. I left social media basically except for blogging. I'm a longtime blogger since the mid 90s, and I'm still blogging at sippy.com. You can sign up for the newsletter if you really want. But like, I really don't blog about product stuff much. I mostly blog about like literature and art and weird business stuff and who knows. But yeah, still blogging. All right, let's get into it. That was roughly a minute. How I learned to stop worrying and learn to love OKRs. I don't know if anyone's seen this movie. I stole the title from this. Raise your hand, virtual hand or otherwise, if you've seen Dr. Strangelove, Kubrick's masterpiece with Peter Sellers. Like, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's a satire about nuclear war. Always a good time. Satires about nuclear war. And I chose this title because I feel like sometimes OKRs feel like nuclear war. And it's weird because we chose this date for this course, this session, sort of accidentally, but it's September 30th, people. Q4 starts tomorrow if you're on a normal Gregorian calendar quarter system. How you feeling about your OKRs, right, for Q4? Oh, look at the love and the happiness. You guys are so full of it. I love it. Really? Wait, Jen, for real? No, Jen's like, no, no.
Absolutely not. You
All
crazy?
right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it was a
Daniel?
sarcastic one, but I couldn't
All
find
right,
sarcasm.
good, good. I love it. I'm into it. I'm a Gen Xer, so sarcasm is like basically my native language. Daniel,
Yeah, we're
you were
still
giving me
re-editing ours.
emoji back. You're feeling good? You're feeling good
we're
about them?
we're still re-editing. We're editing.
All right, good. There we go. See, it's like basically like you can be. So I asked ChatGPT to make me a couple of images about how people are feeling about their OKRs, because this is what you do also in 2024 is you ask ChatGPT to make images for you. So like this person has their all stuff together, even though they can't quite make an R in their slide. I'm really proud of them. And this guy can't make a K and he's losing his mind. So it's a question really about where on the spectrum you live. And if you've seen Dr. Strangelove, you can either be one of the three characters that Peter Sellers plays, which is the president who is like calm, cool, and collected, or you can be Slim Pickens as he rides the bomb, all, not to spoil the ending. I mean, look, spoilers. This movie is like 40 years old, so like it's fair for me to spoil a movie. Slim Pickens rides the bomb all the way down to the bottom and like basically blows up with the bomb. It's pretty great. Very funny movie. Highly recommend. So you can either be Peter Sellers or Slim Pickens, or you can be like this totally put together woman or this guy who's like completely losing his shit. Okay. Ooh, I swore. I'm so sorry for the delicate ears. Okay, here's what helped me stop worrying and learn to love OKRs. 5 things. I'm going to go through each of these 5, reminding myself that this is not a project, this is a process. Yeah, we're going to talk about loops a little bit. 2, OKRs should never drive your product strategy. It should be the other way around. Other way around, people. 3, stop being so religious about outcomes over outputs. Okay. Talk about a little bit of a balance there. 4, with great power comes great responsibility. And 5, always be communicating. These things sort of help me sort of relax. I used to get so stressed about OKRs as a product leader and like leading my team and dealing with the rest of the VPs and the CEO and like, how are we going to get these? Are we get them done? Or people are going to get like, how are we going to review them? Are we going to be there? It's like, and I just like literally every quarter I would start to have heartburn and it was the absolute worst. Like, I'm not sure if anyone here can relate to that, but I basically started like, it's like Calgon Take Me Away, just like relaxed into it. Another Gen X reference for those of you who are old enough to do that. So number 1, reminding myself that this is not a project, it's a process. At Reforge, we are very big on loops, not funnels or like straight lines. Everything goes in a loop. And I think one of the things that really helped me relax about OKRs is that one is that it used to really stress me out that they happened every quarter because you'd be like, oh my God, I'm so worried. I got to get these things done. And I have to like basically relook at everything and look at all the data and pull everything together and make a presentation and like set my team up for all of these things that they got to go do. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. They happen every quarter. Like that's a good thing. Like you can actually get better at it, right? And it's sort of this kind of like flip from being like, this isn't like a thing that you wrap a bow up, like you make a present, you tie the bow, and it's like this thing that only gets delivered once. Like, no, this is a repeatable process, right? Around drafting, updating, sharing, aligning, and socializing, launching them, reinforcing and reviewing them, and then conducting this quarterly postmortem so that you can draft another one and do it again. And if you think about these 6 steps and you're like, every quarter, I just want to get better at like parts of these. Like, not every quarter are you going to make every single one of these steps like amazing. You're like, oh, you know what? Next quarter, we kind of blew it at launching the OKRs and getting everybody aligned and knowing what was going on. Like, we're going to do better at launching them next time. Or like, you know what? Like, we didn't do a good job of reinforcing and reviewing during the quarter. Like we did it at the beginning of the quarter. October 1st, everybody knew the OKRs. And by November 15th, we were like, what? I don't even know my objectives, much less the key results, right? So like next quarter, like, oh, let's focus on reinforcing and reviewing. And if you kind of like relax into this process of like, no, this is like a thing that we're just going to get better at as a team, it sort of like takes the stress level down. At least it has for me in the past, and maybe it will for you. All right. Number 2, OKR should never drive your product strategy. I feel like this is like, I probably should have put this as number 1, but it's probably better to start with the process than it is like the overall thing. But like, one of the things that I see all the time with teams is that basically like they write a product strategy or they draft the roadmap and then they get into OKR land and it's like, well, we've got to hit these key results. So let's change all of our product plans so that we can hit these key results. Right? Like, and you kind of throw your product strategy out the window or your roadmap out the window in order to like hit some KR that you come up with as a team or that your VP like basically says like we need to hit this KR. And it's just a reminder that like this is the tail of the dog. The tail should not wag the dog. These are ways to hold yourselves accountable to the things that you say you're going to do, not a way to drive what you're going to do. Right? Like you have to back up and come at this from a product strategy lens and a roadmap lens, and then you can drive your OKRs. And this is a thing that we like really hit in the Mastering Product Management class, if any of you are interested in taking that, is like OKRs frankly come last for a reason in our agenda, in our curriculum. Like we talk about strategy, we talk about metrics and dashboards, we talk about roadmaps and specs, and then we finally talk about OKRs. Like, because this is not the goal. The goal is not to hit your OKRs. The goal is to deliver value for your customers and for the business, right? And that should come out of your product strategy and your product vision. So if you're here at this session, you probably already know what OKRs stand for, your objectives, like what you hope to accomplish, and your key results, numerically based expressions of success or progress. Everybody should probably know that. If you're at all related in this business, it's fine. But here's some things like the kind of different approaches and what happens if you actually like do goals first or roadmap first, right? If you do goals first, like, or KR first, it's like, we got to hit this number. You'll have like all sorts of ideas from the teams about like how to hit that number, how to hit that KR, right? And your incentives become short term, right? Around like, what can we do? And by the time you actually launch this KR, let's say it's October 1st, and then you're going to go like do some discovery, do some definition, maybe do some design and ship something. It's like December 31st already. And then you're like, oh, we got to rewrite our things for next quarter. So like, it really incentivizes short-term goals and thinking over the expense of long-term progress and like real focus for the team. On when you do it roadmap first, it's like a really clear tie to strategy. You get your objectives that are defined at a roadmap level. One of the companies I worked with in the past, we actually renamed OKRs to SKRs, which is strategies and key results, just to make it clear that objectives are not another goal. An objective is not like hit X dollars in ARR. That's a KR. Like, an objective should be like something that is tied to your strategy, which is like win the market or really serve customers or crack into this new segment, right? Like, be the best at X. Like, then the KRs can basically be the way that you get there. And it really empowers, like, if you think about this roadmap first as opposed to KR first, it empowers the team with this customer-centric approach. Like, it really helps you keep your customer, your user, like front of mind, as opposed to, we're just trying to hit this number. We're just trying to hit this number. Because people then get over-rotated on hitting the number, and they'll do things that are like unnatural and potentially damaging for the business if they basically go number first as opposed to user first. All right. Number 3. I like this one too. Stop being so religious about outcomes over outputs. How many people have ever basically been in an OKR? This is like a virtual hand or an actual hand thing, so I can see. How many people have ever been in a situation where it's like they're designing a KR and you have someone on your team or someone maybe that you work for who's like, no, 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 no. That KR needs to be a number. You cannot have like ship feature Y as your KR. Yeah, there we go. Right. People sometimes get like serious religion about this. And I think that even like some of the OKR writing on the internet or even some of the books like basically claim like, no, 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 your KRs all the time need to be numbers. Otherwise, they are not key results. And it's like, okay, back off. Because sometimes you can be in situations where an output of a team or actually like getting to a binary outcome of like shipping this is a perfectly fine OKR, perfectly fine KR for an O. Okay. And I really like this kind of like, I'm a Libra, it's Libra season. I'm coming to full power right now as a Libra. So basically, I like balance in my life. And so I really think about this as balance, right? Which is like, you can actually have output oriented KRs as long as they have like time frames and are like tightly defined. They can be really motivating for a team, right? Which is like, launch this new feature by July 31st. Like, get this thing out the door. I've used a thing in the past where it's like, if I have like a boss or someone that's really religious about having a KR attached to it, it's like, have at least end customers using this in beta by this date. right? If people are like, well, what does the definition of launch mean? Does it mean that like we've shipped it, or that we've finished our A/B test, or that we've actually released the blog post, or we've done whatever? And it's like, no, no, no. Then set a thing of like, well, end customers or end people in beta or in full production by whatever, by this date, right? And it's really easy to measure by a date with a number of people, but it's output oriented. It's like, yeah, we shipped the thing, right? We got the thing out there, like we finished the work. We actually got the thing out. And then outcome oriented, right? Like having them like, this is a classic one. Increase signups by 15% as a result of this new feature, right? Everybody knows what those KRs look like. Like really tying like, here's the objective, here's the thing. So here's an example, some TripAdvisor. This is straight from the Reforge material. TripAdvisor KR, OKRs, right? So the objective, if you think about the objective is like a real strategy thing here, right? Which is like establish TripAdvisor as the leading platform for booking hotels. And this is like objectives can be vague like this. Objectives can be strategy statements. They don't need to be like, this is the actual number of what it means to be a leading platform for booking hotels. That's what KRs are for, right? So here's some high leverage KRs, right? Like launch hotel booking by September 30th. Really clear. They should have launched that today. It's September 30th. Add 1,000 users by the end of Q1. This is the other thing. Let's say that it's Q3 and their goal is to launch hotel booking by September 30th. You can have KRs that actually expand over a quarter boundary. Just saying. Like that's a little bit heretical in some of this, where it's like, no, 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 we got to have all of our KRs tied to this particular quarter. It's like, no, we're going to do work in this quarter that will hit by a date in the future, right? Like it's being like honest about the product strategy work that you're doing and the work that you're doing around like trying to grow the business so that you can hit something in the future. Achieve a 5% booking conversion rate, achieve a minimum threshold NPS. These are all great KRs because they're like real clear and tied to the strategy, and they're like X. Like these are low leverage. That is Reforge speak for not good KRs. Launch with a large number of bookable hotels on the platform. What is a large number? Given that, like, you know, if you got Hilton, like that'd be one hotel chain, maybe a large number of hotels, but like that's not specific enough. Also, complete product spec by July 15th. This is one where it's like, um, that's not really a good KR because it doesn't deliver customer value, right? Like an internal spec doesn't deliver customer value. I've seen teams come with KRs that are like, finish research, like write specs, understand X, like build dashboard. I mean, unless you're literally a data analysis and dashboard team, like that's not a great KR. I can imagine if you're an internal service team and you're building dashboards, then that would be fine because your customer is the product team or the people that are using the dashboards. But like if you're doing like feature work for actual users, like completing a product spec is like doesn't deliver customer value. It's good for you, it's good for your engineers, but like not a great KR. It's like an internal milestone. Always think about focusing on like value that you can deliver for your customer so that you keep yourself honest about like, no, we are market facing and we are focused on delivering customer value. Okay. That horse has been beaten dead. Okay. Number 4, with great power comes great responsibility. This is one where I've had a lot of pushback, surprisingly, on this from PMs that I've worked with in the past, which is basically ownership, right? Every OKR, every KR, and basically like I look at it at the KR level, and then also at the objective level needs to have an owner. And if you don't have an owner, then it's really easy to like basically shirk responsibility. And this is it can be painful sometimes as like an individual contributor PM to want to basically like sign up for that responsibility, right? To be like, oh God. And especially as product people who typically like you don't really have positional power. Like the engineers and designers typically don't report to you. You can't really tell them what to do. They you have some like relational power and some authority around like the content that you're doing, but like you don't really have authority. And so it's really hard to then say like, no, I'm going to take responsibility for this KR. But this is where I think great PM careers are made, honestly, which is volunteering and signing up for like, yeah, I'm going to take responsibility for this KR or for this entire objective and track those KRs across it. Because that's where you can actually say like, I'm going to start to like exercise the skills that I know I'm going to need to have as a product leader to influence, to communicate, to like cheerlead, repeat the messaging over and over and over again of like, no, this is our objective and these are our key results, to like develop the dashboards that let you track it, to bring it up in stand-ups every day, to bring it up in your weekly one-on-ones with your manager, to bring it up like with in your status meetings that like these are as a reminder, like people get really, really tired of this, but it's the only way, like it's the whole like repetitive communication of like, as a reminder, this is our objective this quarter and this is our KR. That's what it means to own it, right? Is to like be responsible for it. And so I would encourage you, if you're seeing in your organization KRs or objectives that aren't being owned, to really advocate for one person owning it, not two or three, not a team. One person is basically the name on the line that is dotted that has to actually report on what's going on with that, and hold yourself accountable and hold your team accountable. Um, and what that helps you do is like making sure that they're aligned. So if you're the owner, then it's really clear that your job is to go talk to the other stakeholders in the organization to make sure that they're aware of the OKR, that they're aware of what you're trying to achieve, of the objective that you're trying to reach, and those key results. And like not only like make sure that they're informed, but enlist their help, right? Like make sure that they like, it's like, hey, I'm just this, I'm just a PM standing here asking for your help, right? I'm trying to bring the movie references in people, and like it's hard on a Monday morning. But like if you're just that PM like saying like I just need your help here, if you take that ownership and they know that your name is next to it, they're much more likely to be like, yeah, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help you out. And it just like that becomes the person, because if you leave it up to your leadership, if you leave it up to your manager, like the VP product or the chief product officer to go do all of that alignment, they're not going to have time. They're going to be busy. They don't like, it's just not going to work as well. And like, you have to go build those relationships inside your organization. Which brings me to number 5, always be communicating. Has anyone seen this movie? Raise your hand if you know what this movie is. Okay, this is from Glengarry Glen Ross, another classic. This is great. This is basically like the AFI Film Institute's top 100 movies that I'm just like giving a course on related to product management. Go see this movie. That's Alec Baldwin with probably the greatest monologue in the history of, I don't know, movies about sales and business. This does actually, this is, if you can't tell, I edited this. It does in the movie say always be closing, which is what you should be doing as a salesperson. But as a PM, always be communicating, right? So lots of ways to communicate. You can go talk to people. If you're not tracking your KRs, you should be tracking your KRs. I'm sure people are tracking your KRs. But one of the things that I've learned the hard way is like, go choose the tools that you're already using. Like, don't go make fancy things. I was at Medium and we adopted a whole product and platform that's just designed for KRs. And it was super fancy and it rolled everything up and it gave you charts and graphs and whatever.
Nobody used it.
Like we should have just done it in Google Sheets, or we should, like if you're using Notion or Confluence or whatever, like go do that. Like go make it a thing where it's like um everybody's going to be in it, everybody's going to be looking at it all the time, like it's going to be front and center. Like make sure that it's the front page of your team wiki, it's the front page of your team's Notion doc, it's the, whatever it is, like make sure that people are looking at it all the time, right? So that's like step one. Step two, do this. Like this is like really easy ways as a PM to like, this is just, you should screenshot this and make sure you're doing this. Like honestly, because in all of you just want people to get so tired of you talking about your OKRs that they're like, God, will you, so that they're excited for the next quarter so that you're talking about something else than the ones that you've been talking about for all quarter. And then you can get that loop going. But it's like all your status emails and updates. If you're doing like weekly, like, hey, this is what I did last week and this is what I'm doing next week, like reference your OKRs in them. If you're doing project and like product, team updates on a weekly basis, like reference your OKRs. If you're doing sprint postmortems, like sprint reviews every week, this is something that I've done like with all my product teams, which is like first slide. And when you're doing sprint review is like, hey, as a reminder, these are our OKRs. And this is how we're tracking against them. Great. Now let's do some demos, right? But like, just to show like, yes, we are paying attention to this. This is what we're trying to achieve. These are the epics, or these are the features that we're actually trying to ship this quarter in to drive these KRs. Great, let's do some demos. And like people will get sick of seeing it and hearing about it. But like, look, every other week, 6 times over the course of a 12-week quarter, not that many times. Use it as a check-in with your manager. If your manager randomizes you, raise your hand if you've ever been randomized by a manager. If a manager has come to you and said like, hey, I know that you're working on X, but can you pay attention to Y because the CEO just asked me about Z, right? Like that's happened to me. Come on. Really? No, you all have perfect managers. This has never happened to you. I don't believe you at all. Maybe everybody needs more coffee. All right. So this OKRs are an excellent way to keep your manager on target. Hey, remember, this is what I signed up for, especially if you signed up to be the owner of an OKR. If you're the person with great responsibility and now great power, like these are the things that I signed up for. And if we need to change those, let's do that. But as a reminder, like these are my priorities for the quarter, and this is what I'm focused on. Like it just is a great focus. And is like, as a manager, I would love nothing more than all of my PMs coming to me and be like, hey, these are my KRs and this is what I'm doing to do them. And like, if you think that they should change, let's have that conversation. Like, it just shows that like their head's in the game, right? Their head's in the game. Product reviews. If you're going with a new feature and you're going to product review and you're like, hey, we're going to go ship this, we're going to go build this new feature. Let's talk about the problems we're going to solve and how we think we're going to solve it and what the market looks like and blah, 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 blah. Bring in the context of like, and this is how it's going to help us achieve our OKRs, right? Because you're much more likely to get funding for that, for your VP and your head of engineering or director to be like, yes, that is something that we should go spend time on because if you can make the clear case that it's going to help you move your OKRs, that's great. And then if you're doing weekly business reviews, like going through metrics, et cetera, OKRs are a great framing for that as well. Here's the other thing. Like OKRs should not be set in stone. They are not etched. They are not like the thing that like, oh, we can't change our plans because the OKRs, you know what OKRs are? They're bits in a spreadsheet or a Notion page. That's all they are. So if you have new information that like, oh my God, we found something else out. Like we learned something. We have a competitor that has reacted this. We've got customer feedback that says Y. Like we've got a major issue with Z. Like you can change your priorities. It just needs to have an explicit conversation. If it's an implicit conversation or it's something that just happens through back channel, that's not cool. Force the conversation about reprioritizing and changing the OKRs, right? Either the KR needs to change or the O needs to change. If the objective needs to change, or you need to slot or like reprioritize, that's totally fine. If it happens all the time, every quarter, that's kind of a sign that you don't really have a strong strategy, but it's fine. If you have a strong strategy and a vision for where you're going, and your team is taking on new information to have you reprioritize your work, and you think it's the right thing to do, or you're making that case, totally fine. But you just have to have that explicit conversation. It just can't happen through in like closed doors and back channels or private Slacks or like DMs and Teams. Like it's just not how it should go. Okay. So you can make mid-quarter adjustments. Um, and then finally, you want to make sure that you're doing grading. And I don't think like people do this enough, which is like keeping even just a Google sheet of like, these are the things we've tried and this is how it's gone. Like, imagine if you were able to walk into a company as a new hire and be like, these are all the things that we've tried over the last 5 years and this is how it's gone. How much more context would you have about like the way the team experiments, the way the team tries and tests hypotheses, the ways the things that you've learned, the landmines to avoid when you're like, hey, we should try X. And then someone says like, well, we tried that 5 years ago and blah, 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 blah. But you could be like, yeah, but the market's changed and this technology's changed and we can try it this way. Like you would just be much better informed. And so like, I would like, there's a great thing in Ray Dalio's book about principles that they have this thing at Bridgewater. They just call it decision log, which is like every time you make a decision, you just write down what the decision was. Like super useful. Like imagine if you had that for every feature, every hypothesis that you tested and the results of it. Okay. We talked about some of these. Draft your OKRs, talked about how to draft good ones, update them over time, share, align, and socialize, have that ownership, go out and talk to people, launch your OKRs, reinforce and review them over time, make sure that you're like making sure everybody's like aligned. And then your postmortem where you're doing grading and where you're doing decision bank. Those 5 things that I talked about are ways that I've relaxed. And again, like thinking about this as a loop where you're going into it and you're like, oh, we're just going to get better at this quarter over quarter. Not that every quarter is this like crazy deadline where it has to be perfect every time. Like, no, it's a process. Just like product development is a process, developing OKRs is a process. And you just want to be thinking about like, how do we get this better? So think about like you run, hopefully, postmortems with your teams when things go right or things go wrong, or you have retrospectives where you talk about how do development work better. Think about this as a product team overall, like with your fellow PMs and with your boss, like how did we do at our KRs? Not just like how did we do against our scoring, but also like how did we do with this process and how do we make this process better? And maybe you can do it in a room like this. For those of you who have seen Dr. Strangelove, this is one of the greatest movie sets of all time. So I think about the loop and I think about being in this like big circle-y room. Turns out Airbnb actually built a full conference room that was like the conference room from Dr. Strangelove in their office in San Francisco in 2013. I really wish I had been able to sit in that conference room. I cannot believe they did that. I'm hoping I need to call friends that worked at Airbnb because I really hope that they did OKR reviews in this room just to make it super dramatic, and so that everyone could learn to stop worrying. Quick thing, and then we'll get to some Q&A because I know I'm like 5 minutes behind. Mastering Product Management starts October 9th. Are you one of the people that are responsible for identifying product opportunities and building roadmaps? Do you want to uplevel your ability to develop product strategy, communicate vision, and set goals? Do you want to go beyond product management foundations and learn how to truly separate yourself from the crowd? This course is for you. If you're at this session, this course is probably for you. You should register today at reforge.com. The course was developed by Sachin Reiki, founder and CEO of NoteJoy. He was previously head of product for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. What I love about the separation that Reforge does between the course creator and the instructor is that some of these things in the course, like I love, some of it I sort of have disagreements with because product management is an art, not a science. And so it's fun to like actually get into it and talk about where some of the material I think doesn't quite fit or doesn't work for me, or I've learned different things. And so it's fun to do that. But it's really, really an incredible course. I love teaching this course. This will be, I don't know, maybe my 6th or 7th time doing it. I just love it. So come and join. We hit product strategy and vision. we hit metrics and dashboards, we hit roadmaps and specs, and we do some of the OKR stuff that you've heard about today. Every week you go through this material, and then we bring in a featured guest to talk about a case in real world application. So like when we get to week 4, you won't see me doing these slides again. What you'll get is a special guest where we talk about their experience running OKRs at companies, and then you get like it's so much fun. This time it'll be Michael Ducker, who I worked with at Twitter. He was at Mercury Bank, and he instituted the OKR process at Mercury, and is now running his own startup. And we'll talk about where it's appropriate to do OKRs and where it's not. Like, it's just a great way to like bring this material to life every week. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll do a bunch of questions and answers. So thank you all for being here. I'm tired of hearing my own voice. So let's maybe get some questions.
All right, we
Sure,
got a
there's some in
lot
the
of questions
chat too.
submitted.
Oh my God, the chat is popping off.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at
Chat
the
is
chat.
popping, and the Q&A has a
All
lot
right,
of
let's
questions
go.
too.
Let's go. Bring it.
Here, why don't I start off with the most upvoted question from Tatiana? Actually,
Yeah.
Tatiana, let us know if you want to come off mute. Otherwise, I can ask it for you.
Tatiana, are you still here? All right,
Going
let's hear it.
once.
Let's just do it.
Okay, I'll ask. So Tatiana asks, could you elaborate on how do we approach setting OKRs for a product that's in the early design and development stages, especially since most OKR examples seem to focus on post-launch metrics?
Yeah.
And what's the best way to measure progress before the product goes to market?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I work with a lot of startups for whom OKRs are not the best thing in the world. It depends on what stage of your company you're at and what the kind of maturity of an OKR process is in the organization. But if you're going from 0 to 1 and launching an entirely new thing, I don't think OKRs are the right framework. Like, I would much rather see you kind of use a framework, like you can Google this, and Reforge has great material on it, called narrative commitments and tasks, which is a kind of an alternate way to think about how to actually get something to market. You could use OKRs where you're doing like, hey, we're going to get this into 5 customers' hands by this date, or something that's a little bit more output oriented. But I would not get too wrapped around the axle of thinking like, how do we adopt OKRs, especially like you don't have OKRs are best when you already have some product market fit. Like, because you may want to be doing things in the quarter that are like, will feel randomizing to a team if there's a lot of uncertainty. If we're still trying to find product market fit, and you're like, we're moving all over the place and we're trying a bunch of different things to get that product market fit. But like, and the team will be like, well, wait a minute, you said our OKRs for the quarter are X. And like a month in, you're like, no, we got to try something different. We're going to like try this other go-to-market plan, or we're going to try this other thing. Like, we're going to ship this feature. Like, I would really encourage you, like, OKRs are best when you have product market fit. And so if you don't have that with your product, or you're still in early development stages, use something like narratives, commitments, tasks, or basically focus on like, look, we just got to get this into a few customers' hands first. Like, really simple KRs.
All right, I'm looking at the questions here. Steph, I saw that you had multiple questions. Would you like to ask live?
Sure, happy to go for it. So my first question is, what are your thoughts on assigning multiple cross-functional owners to a KR? And the context here is I work in an organization where we've historically struggled with alignment between the operational and kind of tech leaders in healthcare services. So curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it sort of depends on the KR. I would advise against it. Like, it's fine to have one person. I would argue like one person should be the there's lots of kind of responsibility frameworks. I would look at like a few of them, but it's like you can have I think you should have one person that's responsible, and then a bunch of people that are actually supporting. There's a great responsibility kind of framework that I've used in the past called DRIP, which is you can have the decider, which should be like the responsible person. R is the recommender, like who's like, they're going to recommend something. Like if you have something that's like, oh, I got to recommend this, but like my boss needs to decide. And then there's the like informed and performing, like people that you need to keep in the loop, and the people that are going to actually do the work. So like there's racy, there's drip, there's a bunch of, kind of things like that. But like for OKRs, I would put one person's name, because you could have a thing where it's like, if it's, I think a sign when you have two people is that your KR isn't actually tightly defined enough, because you've got two different owners that are like sort of responsible for the same thing at different lenses. And it's like, no, make one person responsible and then like figure out if you need to separate the KRs.
All right, we've got a question from an anonymous participant.
All right.
How do you set OKRs when objectives are constantly changing, especially in a startup?
Oh boy. If the objectives are changing, that's a sign that you should back up a step to like, do you have clarity on your product vision, like where you're trying to go and the strategy that you're using to get there? And so as an ICPM, it sometimes is hard to essentially call that out. But it's an opportunity for a real conversation with your manager or with leadership about like, hey, like I'm confused, like I'm trying to like achieve like the KRs that we need, but the objectives keep changing. Can we back up for a second and be like, can we talk about the vision for the product and where we're going and the strategy that we're using to get there? And not to plug this course, but this course really, the whole point is like for you to get the tools to understand like, here's what a product strategy looks like in a product strategy map and a vision. These are here's how you define metrics, here's how you define a roadmap, and this is how you define KRs. And so those things are all like delicately interconnected. And so I would really push back and have a hard conversation with leadership about like, this is unclear. And when we don't have clarity, it really hurts my ability to work with the team effectively. And so this is where like bringing your OKRs as a tool in your one-on-ones every week with your manager is really, really powerful, because you'll start to see like, no, I'm getting randomized. Remember last week we talked about this and now you're talking about this. Like, this isn't like, let's get a little bit more stability here.
Looking through the questions here, Jen, I saw that you had multiple questions. Would you like to go off mute and ask live?
Yes, sure. So I'm curious on how you measure the success of the KR across that spans across multiple quarters is one question, because we're starting to measure, how many KRs meet or exceed, hit that just to see on average what's our percentage rate of actually achieving our KRs as a group. And my team is the program management team. So I listen to these things to try to learn how to speak to product managers better. Front. But
Good luck.
I know. But the other thing we're looking at is, how do we utilize OKRs in program management for delivering a program rather than just all these delivery output dates and really format our programs that way. Because we're now kind of in charge of leading the strategic goals across the company on that end. So it's becoming more and more important to think in that direction. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Well, let me hit the second one first, which is like, just to be totally clear, like I've never run a program management office, so I don't have great advice there. Other than I think one of the things that you can do as program managers is sort of take some of the things that are in this presentation and be like, no, let's make sure these are true, right? Which is that every KR, every objective has an owner and like clear process for making sure that these are like communicated. I think that, there's some responsibility that you have to hit delivery dates, right? And make sure that people are communicating well and that like work is getting done and that like things are moving smoothly. And so I would think about like, there's probably like your participation in the KRs for the organization, is like sort of as a facilitator role. And then there's maybe KRs for your team about improving the process and improving the tool set that you used, right, to make that happen. Can you remind me your first question? I'm going to go back to that one.
it was just KRs that span multiple.
Oh yeah. KRs. Yeah.
So how do you measure
that?
that?
Totally. So one of the things that's a really great question. One of the things that I've done in the past is like, mark that like, we're not going to score us on this KR. Like, let's say that it's Q3 or it's like we're setting our Q4 KRs and there's something that's going to be a goal for Q1, like it's like there is something about like what customer value can you deliver in this quarter, but knowing that you're going to go and have a longer term thing in Q1, right? And saying like, let's actually create the nearer term KR for this quarter and knowing that it's headed towards this long-term KR for or longer term KR for Q1 or Q2 is totally fine. You shouldn't score yourself on the Q1 or Q2 one. You should score yourself on the near term one. I think it's actually useful for people to have that longer term visibility of like, we're starting here. It's a hard thing to actually like document in sheets or whatever, but it just like, this is where people have to sort of like let go of the rigidness of some of the KR stuff of like, no, we're starting here with our goal of getting, because sometimes you'll get leaders be like, wait, that's your only goal. It's like, no, 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 we're doing this so that we can get to the bigger goal in Q1 or the bigger goal in Q2. Like, and having that documented at somewhere in there is actually really helpful. So that I would say like, as much as you can, like what's the output or outcome metric that you can get to in this quarter that leads you towards Q1 or Q2, and then like have that kind of, in italics, like so that we can get to this in Q1, right?
Gotcha.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you.
All right, Michael, I know we're already over time. Do you have room for one more
Yeah,
question?
yeah. I can go a
Yeah.
few more minutes if people want to stick around. Yeah.
Okay. Another upvoted question from Anonymous is, how do you deal with an organization that wants to use OKRs as a framework, but it's also very much on the project mindset camp?
Hmm. All right. So not a lot of, I wish Anonymous would not uncloak themselves. Maybe they're nervous that their coworkers are here too. That happens. I think like Marty Kagan's written a bunch about this. If you've read any of his work, and I like encourage you to just go look at Silicon Valley Product Group stuff for some of the blog posts. And there's a bunch of this on Reforge too, about like the notion of being a feature factory, as opposed to like customer oriented or like real product teams. And I think that this is you've got a challenge here of like not being one of the things I really like about some of the examples, even in the TripAdvisor one that we talked about today, is that they're customer oriented. And it's a lens that I look through working with the product teams that I work with of like, how do we make sure that we're delivering customer value in these KRs, right? That it's really clear that we're making things easier for users that also benefit the business. And when you're in a project mindset, it ends up being very, very, remember our Venn diagram of output and outcome oriented, it becomes very kind of output oriented shifting. And so the more that you can push your leadership and your conversations and the KRs that you're setting up to be like, if they're out of whack and being much more kind of output oriented than outcome oriented, and then take the framework of like, all right, what is the outcome for our customer? Just to force that conversation, I think is sort of the way to approach that problem. It's hard. I'm like, you're trying to do culture change like at an IC level. It's hard. Like I just want to like acknowledge that like when you're in that situation, it is personally a very hard thing to tackle. And so like find small wins of like shifting that mindset from being output oriented to outcome oriented, because you're probably out of whack.
All right, we've got another question from Catherine. Catherine, if you're still on the line, would you like to ask live?
Sure. Hi.
Hey.
I was just wondering, so you talked about OKRs being owned, like just one individual owning the KR, and that probably is a product manager. But what about like, does that mean, for example, an engineering team wouldn't have OKRs? How would you deal with that in an organization?
Oh yeah. So that's a really good question. So I have seen, so when it's typically a product manager, but I have seen engineers own KRs around quality, around performance, things that they have like more direct control over. And I have seen, so that's one thing where it's like there is customer value, and you're trying to like reduce your error rate or reduce your bug count or reduce or improve your performance of your application. And that can clearly be owned by an engineering manager or an engineering lead. Like they're the person, again, they're not the only person responsible for doing the work. They're just responsible for like owning it, right? Communicating about it, making sure that people understand the goal, like making sure that the team stays excited about it, that they know that they're making progress, like making sure that the work to achieve that KR is prioritized. Like that is a key thing. The other is that I've also seen organizations do KRs by department that are not necessarily attached to product outcomes, right? So, and this is like we want to improve our product development process, or we want to reduce the amount of time it takes for people to do code reviews, or by the end of the quarter we want to improve like how we're actually, you know, as a product leader, like how we're doing product reviews, like basically redesign the product review process, like because it's not working. Like you can imagine some like internally focused OKRs, and your objective is like make a high performing product development organization. And then like some of the KRs may be like, you know, migrate from Jira to Linear. Like, you know, who knows? But like, there's like, not that I dislike Jira, you know, but I really dislike Jira. But there's like lots of things to do there that are like, are really kind of team focused and less customer focused. And you just have to be like, honest about that and say like this is an internal process oriented OKR, and we're gonna prioritize that appropriately. I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine.
All right. Why don't we take one last question? And I'm looking through our question bank. Manoj, I saw that you sent in multiple questions. Would you like to ask live?
He may have dropped.
Then I will ask on
I
his
saw him
behalf.
earlier on the screen, and then he disappeared, so he may have dropped. He's got work.
So his
He's got
question
OKRs.
was,
September 30th. He's got OKRs to write.
you know what? Maybe it's related to his question because he wants to know, how do you foster accountability from stakeholders who you have dependencies on to accomplish an OKR? Maybe you had to track
Oh,
somebody down.
you got to track them down. How do you foster? This is a hard question. How do you foster accountability from a cross-functional partner that like their name isn't on the line, right? Um, this is sort of like the hardest thing in product management, frankly, which is like it's easier with engineers because like you're with them every day. Like you probably are doing stand-ups and you build like, you know, relationships with them and you feel like you're part of a team. Like it's easier with designers because you're right there with them and you're like thinking about customer problems and you're doing research. It's harder with folks that are a little bit further away in the organization, whether that's support, whether that's operations. Like it can be really challenging. And so this is where building a relationship of trust with that person um, and really investing the time to be vulnerable with them about like this is what I'm trying to achieve and this is how hard it is and I want to help you, you know, help me help you, help me help you type things. Those conversations are really really important, and they can't just happen around the context of KRs. Like I think one of the mistakes that I've seen PMs make, which is like, oh, I've got ownership over this KR. I need to go like talk to this person and make sure they do what I want them to do. If that's the first time you're talking to them, it's going to be challenging. So that's not to say that like if it is the first time, you have to kind of go in and be like, "Hi, um, I'd like to meet you. Here's what I'm working on. I would love to partner with you on this." And hopefully it's the start of a beautiful friendship. But it really is something where it's like investing that time and really putting the work in to build a relationship of trust where they know that you're coming at this not to be successful for yourself, but for the business, and that you're working hard to make them successful at the same time. And that's challenging, but it's something that just like if you come with that mindset, it's much, much better. Um, It's hard. This job is hard. This is the other thing about what I love about mastering product management is that when I bring in guests, one of the things that we talk about mostly is how we've made mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes in my career, and all the people that I bring in, we talk about mistakes because this job is hard. And it's sort of especially at this like growing part of your career where you have more responsibility and like people aren't really telling you exactly how to do it. Like it's really challenging. And so it's really like I really try to foster a sense of community with everybody that's in the course so that everybody kind of gets to know each other and can share and be vulnerable and like get on Zoom and talk about like, yeah, this job is really rough. So, but super rewarding and fun. Like, who doesn't love shipping pixels for people? It's really great, making people's lives better. Maybe actual physical products too, but I like pixels.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for talking us through OKRs. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed Michael's expertise. If you want to learn more or hear from him more, definitely check out Mastering Product Management as a part of our course catalog.